All right, awesome. Okay, now I have to figure out how to share my screen again. Oh my, okay. Okay. I'm beginning. Where did you guys go? You're gone now. Okay, that was really weird. Okay, there we go. There we go. You were gone for a minute. Okay. Now. Okay. Can you see? Yes, we're good? Okay, awesome. Okay. Thank you, Abby, for giving me the opportunity to come and present at this awesome forum. We've got a lot of great, very tenured nonprofit organizations here. So probably most of what I'm going to share with you is nothing new. You've all had an opportunity to work with amazing boards. Hopefully, though, I can give you a few reminders and some ideas and some tips to help maybe with board governance. Okay, governance. Sorry, excuse me. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about board committees, board participation and attendance, board term limits, finding good board members, bylaws, turning the reins over, and then clearing the path and staying out of the way. But before we get started, I would like to open it up to the group and ask if there's anything anyone would like me to make sure I cover, or anything that's been kind of weighing on you as far as your board goes, anything you're hoping I cover in this presentation. No? Awesome board participate. Everybody has amazing boards. That's great. I love it. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump in and we'll hopefully be able to give you some good information. Okay, so did that not change? That didn't change, did it? How about now? Yeah? Okay, so one of the most important things, in my opinion, are board committees. If you do it right, most of the work can be done in committees, and you just have those committee members come to the board meetings, and they have an opportunity to present on the work they did, any topics they have, or any of the different tasks you guys as the actual nonprofit want the committees to achieve. Committees have to have goals, right? They need to have clear job descriptions. They have to have defined goals. The goals should obviously be measurable. They, in my opinion, should be reviewed at least on an annual basis. They obviously should align with the strategic mission and the goal of the organization they're there to support. A chair who can involve all members in the committee's work. So a lot of times what I see is you'll have a few board members who are willing to take on all the work, and they sign up for everything. They jump on a committee, and this person they've spread themselves too thin, and they can't possibly do all of the work. So a good committee chair is one who can be okay with the awkward silence when people start to ask for volunteers for different tasks on the committee. It's hard as a board, or excuse me, it's hard as a committee chair to not feel like you want to take on all the work, but it's important you spread it out and you let all of the committee members participate in the work. It kind of goes without saying that if you don't have committee members willing to show up to the committee meetings and do the work, it's not going to work. So I really think it's important to lay the groundwork and lay the expectations out before a committee is formed, before you determine what the committee is going to be doing. Are we going to meet weekly? Are we going to meet monthly? Are we going to meet bi-monthly? What is that going to look like? And then make sure you get the commitment from all of the committee members to participate and show up to the meetings, or to the committee meetings. I like to have committee meetings the week before the board meeting, because that gives them an opportunity to meet as a committee, and then they come to the board meeting and they're able to present at that board meeting the next time the board meets. I just feel like if too much time passes between the committee meeting and the board meeting, some things tend to get lost. So for me, that is a best practice. Most committees don't make decisions. They are truly there to talk about whatever goal or whatever objective or that the board has determined needs to be focused on. They will go, they'll bring ideas and recommendations back to the board, but they typically don't make the decisions. That is actually brought back to the board for the decisions to be made. In addition to measuring the goals, the committees should do a self-evaluation. They should determine, are we moving in the right direction? Are we achieving the job description, the defined goals? What's our timeline? Are we going to get to where we want to be by the deadline? Just an important time to sit back and make sure you evaluate your progress and evaluate all of the work that's being done. Something that is a little bit different for some boards, maybe it's not, but I think it's okay to ask non-board members to serve on formal committees. They don't necessarily, you don't have to have board members on your committees. A lot of times, they will become your future board members. You've gotten to know them, you see the work they do, you see the commitment they have to the organization, and they are able to participate in a way different than being an actual board member. And it also has, you have an opportunity to see kind of an outsider's point of view, because sometimes you get a little bit of tunnel vision as a board member. At least I have experienced that before. And so I think it's okay to involve non-board members on committees when possible. Even in the financial side, even on the financial side of the house, a board I sit on currently, this was new to me, and I kind of didn't understand. I felt like it was not okay to have a non-board member serving on the finance committee, but we're a nonprofit and our financials are open for all the world to see if somebody wants to look at them. So I think, especially on a financial committee, as I got to thinking about it, it was probably good to have non-board members serving on the committee. And so I think that's okay. Obviously, that's something that has to be approved in your bylaws and all of that stuff. But that's something that we have tried and it's worked. I'll pause here. Does anyone have any questions around board committees or anything you want to add to the conversation?
Krista, I have a quick question. How do you handle things, and I'm sure that this is different for different boards, but how do you handle committee members that are not engaged?
That's hard. That's like the $1 million question, right? Not only committee members, but board members as well. You have to have the tough conversations with your committee members, because work can't get done if you have committee members or board members that aren't showing up. So that's an opportunity for possibly the executive team of the board, get the chair of the committee and the executive director and maybe specific team members, and see if there's another way for you to utilize that person. Maybe a committee isn't the right choice. Maybe they can volunteer doing different things. I think it's really, really important that you have that conversation and just say, hey, you're busy. Everybody's busy. And you may have originally thought this time commitment would work for you. It seems like it isn't working for you. Does the day not work for you? Does the time not work for you? Obviously, you're not going to move everything for that one person, but I think it's okay to have that conversation. And then at the end of the day, you can just agree, is it going to work or is it not going to work? And just, say that you appreciate that person's time and effort, but we really want to have committee members that are engaged and willing to show up. So sometimes you just have to be honest and say, it's not working for you, it's not working for me, but let's find something else you can help with. Did that answer your question, Abby?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, so great segue, Abby. Board participation and attendance. Board attendance obviously is critical. You can't conduct business if you don't have a quorum. And I've heard this is becoming more and more of an issue. I was talking to someone else who is a chair of a board, and I can't remember what board it is now, but she was asking me if we have issues with absenteeism on the boards I've sat on. And right after COVID, right after everything really started opening up again, and things are really kind of getting back to normal, I felt like we were having a hard time with people attending board meetings. Whether it was virtual or in person, it really didn't matter. And I don't know really why that was the case, why people sort of all of a sudden they're not engaged anymore, whatever that looked like. But you have to have conversations with your board members and help them understand we can't do business if we don't have a quorum. It's great for all of us to get together and talk about things, but every board meeting has business. Every board meeting you have to approve minutes, you have to potentially approve changes in financials, and board members need to understand that they've got to be there. It's important that before you ever invite someone to a board, they understand what the commitment is 100%. They also should know when the meetings are going to be. I think one of the things, and I serve on the Gold Foundation board right now, and one of the things I love that Gold does is they schedule our board meetings a year in advance. And that's really helpful because we're all very busy professionals. We're obviously doing this as a volunteer of our time. And so for us to have our board meetings on our calendars a year in advance, I think that's really, really great. So like I said, prior to asking a board member to join, you've got to just be honest with them and help them understand what the commitment is. If a board member is not, this was interesting. I actually was looking at just kind of doing a little bit of research, and board members have fiduciary responsibilities, as we all know. And that means the directors have an ethical and legal responsibility to put organizations' interests above their own. When you become a board member, it's more than just I'm becoming a board member and hey, look, I get to put this on my resume now, right? It's actually a commitment to this organization, and you are truly making that commitment of your time to the organization. So it was the dereliction of duty thing was a little alarming to me, but it's true. It's absolutely true. Chronic absenteeism can impact the engagement levels of high-performing board members, and the overall morale of the board is diminished. I've seen it. I've been a part of boards where, you've got the people who are committed. They're there every single board meeting, unless there's an emergency or something like that. And then you have the board members who show up, when they can, and it really starts to weigh on the engaged board members because they're like, we're doing all the work here and you're just showing up when it's convenient for you. So obviously, it's going to impact your engaged board members. So you really need to take a look at that and make sure you're not hurting the board members who are engaged and willing to give you guys a full commitment. Some of the things to mitigate the absenteeism, we've already talked about giving board members appropriate notice, honestly, a year in advance. You always have your board meetings on the same day every single month, the second Tuesday of the month or whatever that looks like, unless agreed upon prior. Enforcing the attendance policies. This is a big deal for me, and I do this. I try to do this as much as possible. I have a roster for both of the boards. That when I was the chair of the Gold Foundation, I had a roster, and Abby has seen it, and Abby helped manage it actually for a period of time. And we would say which board members were present and which board members were not present. And we would allow a certain number of excused absences in a calendar year. Things come up. We do, as a reminder, we do work. And so these things do, these are volunteer spots and things will come up. But it's important you have a clear attendance policy so people understand, I can miss 2 meetings, I can have 2 excused absences in a year and still be able to serve on the board and, not have a fear of being asked to resign or the board voting me off. I think it's really important you enforce that absenteeism policy or the attendance policy. It's hard. It's really hard to have those conversations, but I've had them, and I've had to say, if this isn't working for you, we have other opportunities. And I kind of keep going back to Goal because Goal is, that's where I spent most of my time as a board member. We have a lot of opportunities at Gold to volunteer. We have a lot of other opportunities to get involved. And I'm sure all of you have those same opportunities. So to go to your board member who is having a problem with attendance, it's okay to say, if it's not working, it's not working. It's okay. Let's figure out a better way for you to get involved. Let's figure out a better way for you to stay involved and still be able to fulfill, whatever it is you want to fulfill as a volunteer. Keep meetings on time. This is a huge, huge deal. I'm sure all of you have been to meetings where we're supposed to start at 5, we're supposed to stop at 6, and at 6:15, somebody's still going on and on and on and on. I am psychotic about starting on time and ending on time. It is so important to make sure you're respectful of the people who are giving their time to your organization. Huge, huge, huge thing that I think it often gets forgotten, and people they can get frustrated very, very quickly. Back to kind of the hybrid meeting. COVID changed the way we do everything. Meeting virtually worked for people. It was great. It served what needed to be served, the purpose it needed to be served. I am not a fan of hybrid meetings at all. I think being in person at board meetings is incredibly important. You can say you're engaged, you're not. You're not. You're multitasking. You're not paying attention. You're not able to really have the good dialogue with the people when you're not in the room. The people who are not in the room get forgotten a lot, I've noticed, and so they kind of miss some of the conversation. They miss the dialogue, and for me, I think you as a board should say we're hybrid or we're not. Or we're virtual or we're not, but there's not an in between. And I think people should be back in person. That's just my personal opinion. So that's a conversation for another day, though, because it's hard. I get it. It is hard. Okay, I'll stop here. Does anyone have anything you'd like to add or any questions? Okay. Board term limits. So incredibly important to have board term limits for obvious reasons. Most nonprofit boards recommend 2 consecutive 3-year terms, and I think that's great because it's hard to get a board member in, get them engaged, kind of get to know the organization, and then all of a sudden their term is over. I've served on boards where they're 1-year terms, and I think that's really that's just too that's hard because you just figure out the organization and now your term is up. So I think the 2 consecutive 3-year terms with a your first nomination is a 3-year term, but you can be nominated for a second 3-year term. Obviously, it encourages new talent, ideas, and perspectives. I don't know how many times you've heard it, but I've heard it before. We've tried this before and it didn't work. That is really discouraging to a new board member. If you have people who have been on the board for ever and ever and ever, they tend to be very stuck in their ways and they're not willing to listen to the ideas of the new board members. And it's very discouraging for a new board member. I've served on boards before where they have term limits, but they don't enforce them. And it's really frustrating to be sitting in a room, be sitting at a board table and throwing out ideas and constantly being told, oh yeah, we've done that before and it didn't work. Oh yeah, no, we've done that and it just simply didn't work. At some point, your new board members will shut down and they won't give new ideas anymore. Term limits help with that. Instead of sitting back and hoping no one will leave, it encourages new talent. It encourages new people to join the board. It allows boards to cycle out those who lose interest, commitment, and time, and they lack the time to continue to fulfill the mission. It also grants those who want to leave to do so gracefully. I have been a part of the Goal Foundation for it. I've been involved now for almost 22 years. I've been on the board for 16. I was ready to be done, and then we hired Eric Bauman and Jake Johnston, who was the incoming board chair, asked me if I would be willing to stay on as the treasurer. And it was only because of Eric that I agreed to stay, because I think that it's important when you have new executive directors that you have, and you know, executive directors, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but having a stable tenured board to support a new executive director, I think is incredibly important. Having that knowledge and experience so that you feel supported as an ED, I think is critical to the mission of the organization. But I'm done, and I've served my time, and I don't ever want anyone to say, good Lord, Krista, are you done? Are you leaving yet? Like, bye, we're done with you. You've done enough. You know, I would never want anyone to say that. So having term limits gives someone an opportunity to say, I'm good. I've done what I'm going to do, and I can exit gracefully, and hopefully the organization is better today than when it was when I first joined the board. Expands the organization circle of influence, obviously, and something I don't think many boards do, which honestly I think is a great idea, and I'm going to start doing this. Interview the board members before they go. They have a ton of experience. They're a treasure trove of information. They might be able to give you some good future thoughts in how you manage the board or how you manage the organization in the future. So I think that's something I've never even considered, and I think I'll try to do that if given the opportunity. Anything on board term limits before I move to the next slide? Okay, how do you find good board members? That's the question everyone is asking themselves. And if it's okay, Troy, I'm going to use Goal as an example, and I can see you, so just say yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I love something the Goal Foundation did recently to encourage new board members, or to find new board members. Reed Thompson, who is a staff member at the Goal Foundation, she had a great vision and really wanted to try something different, and talked to the board and got the board's buy-in to create an intake form. So first thing that needed to happen was the board needed to determine, well, what are our gaps? You know, what skills are we looking for? What professions are we looking for? What interest are we looking for? And so all of that information was gathered by the board. And then there was an intake form that was created that went out to the community. It went on the Goal Foundation's website. It was on our socials. United Way, Abby shared it through United Way, all kinds of different avenues to try to help people understand that we were looking for new board members. Lots and lots and lots of people were interested in joining the Goal Foundation, which was very exciting. And people we never would have known was interested, that we now got to see that there was a lot of interest. So we took all of those applications, and we kind of fit that. We looked at the needs assessment and the skill gap we were trying to accomplish. And we took all of those applications, and we came out with, like, I don't know, 10 or 15 different individuals who we narrowed down as potentially board members to fill 2 open positions. And then the nominating committee got together, and we had a lot of really good dialogue about it, a lot of good conversation. And then we brought, I think it was like 4 or 5, now I can't remember how many names we brought forward. And then we did that so that we could determine, do we have any board members that know these individuals, who would vouch for these individuals and give them a nomination. And we were able to find 2 fantastic, they're going to be fantastic board members. But what we also did is we determined we have people who are very interested in the Goal Foundation, and even though they were not selected to be on the board, they still want to be involved. They still want to they would still want to know how to get involved. They want to volunteer at on the events committee. Or the events team. There are a lot of different ways they can get involved. And it was nice to know that even though they didn't make it to the board, they still really want to be part of the Volk Foundation. So I just wanted to give Reed Thompson huge props for that, because she led the charge. It was something we'd never done before, and I think I really think it's going to be beneficial, and I think it's something we should continue to do for the future. Okay, so ask current board members for recommendations. Obviously, that's a great way to determine or to find new board members. Your potential board member should have at least two of the 3 W behaviors: wealth, work, wisdom. Can they give us money? Can they work hard? Or do they have institutional knowledge in the organization? If they have 2 of the 3, obviously that's a win. This last one is really important to me, and I think that it depends on who you ask as to whether or not it's important to them. I think having prior involvement in the organization is very important. If they volunteered with you before, if they know your mission, if they know your cause, if whatever that is, they obviously have an interest. They obviously want to truly give their time and skills to the organization because they've done it without being on the board. So I personally think it's very important that you select board members who do have some sort of experience in volunteering with your organization, but not a deal breaker, because there's people that come along that you don't know, and you don't want to pass them up just because they haven't been involved in your organization. Anything to add there, or any questions? Okay, bylaws. Love them or hate them, you gotta have them. I'm one of those weirdos that love bylaws. I can tell you that whenever I've read bylaws, I learn so much about the organization, why we do the things we do. Like I said, I'm just kind of one of those weird people that I like to look at them. I like to rewrite them. I like to continually talk about them. Obviously, they govern the rules of the organization, and they can only be changed in a board of directors meeting with a unanimous vote, or not a unanimous vote, but a majority vote. Policies and procedures define the day-to-day operations of the organization. And I had never really, I didn't know there was a difference between bylaws and policies and procedures, and why you really want to have bylaws and policies and procedures. Policies and procedures can be changed without outside of a board meeting. You obviously want to have a conversation about it. You obviously want to make sure the board is comfortable with it. But a change to policy and procedure can actually be done, at least in the Gold Foundation organization, with an approval through the E-team. And I like that, because things change and things you need to shift in certain directions quickly. And a policy and procedure allows you to do that. How often should they be reviewed? And I think annually. They should be looked at on an annual basis. One of the other boards I sit on, we have a retreat at the beginning of the school year, and one of the things we do is we look at the bylaws, and that's where we make changes. Is where we recommend changes. When we have new board members joining, that's their first meeting, is the retreat. So the first time they're at a meeting with a bunch of the boards, the other board of directors, they're learning about the bylaws. And that, I think, is great, because they learn a lot about the organization. And so I would suggest, if you aren't doing that, or if your board is not doing that today, that is something you do at least on an annual basis. Anything else on bylaws? Like I said, love them or hate them, but you got to have them. Okay. Clear the path and stay out of the way. The role of a board is to focus on the high-level strategy, oversight, and accountability of the organization. We need to understand the needs of the organization and provide support. do not get involved in the staff and the day-to-day activities unless the executive director asks you for help. I think the line gets blurred sometimes, and I have seen boards overstep their, I don't know what the role, overstep their role and try to manage the day-to-day operations of the organization. And that is incredibly damaging for an executive director, and it never should happen. Again, unless the executive director is asking you for your help in whatever that looks like. The executive team obviously should have regular meetings with the executive director to understand the current needs, how the board can support them, and then get out of the way. Whatever the executive director says the needs are, the whole purpose of the board is to just support that executive director in whatever vision they have. Anything on that? Okay, turning over the reins. So there's nothing scarier for a board chair.
I do have a quick question.
Oh, yes.
Just about the last slide.
Mm-hmm.
So I have seen a board who is it part of the, I guess it's probably is created in the bylaws as my guess, but when a board is not happy with the leadership of the director, I know that they can kind of vote in or interview a new director.
Yeah.
I guess if you've seen that in the past, how would a board member, does it start in the committee first and then kind of branch out? How would that look like from like a perspective? Because that's a really hard situation and it wasn't handled well with the one I saw personally.
So it probably would start with a board member going to like a member of the executive committee. So the chair, the vice chair, the treasurer, and just saying, you know, I am not confident in our executive director and their ability to move this organization in the direction it needs to. And obviously it would be a long process because you don't want to, you know, you wouldn't want to just automatically take that one person's word for it. You would probably want to do some interviews with the other board members and just find out really what is it? Is it a culture thing? Are they putting the organization in jeopardy? You know, if that's the case, and then obviously quick action needs to be taken. But it would have to go to the, if the determination was made, we are not confident in this executive director as a board. At that point, the executive director, and it is in the bylaws, the executive director the executive team would go to the executive director and share the concerns that the board brought forward, and then determine, are we going to make a, you know, are we going to terminate now? Are we going to put you on a plan, or, you know, whatever that would look like. But yes, it would probably start with kind of some contention in the board, and then it would bubble up to the executive team, and then eventually it would end up with a conversation with the executive team and the executive director. Luckily, I've never had to be a part of that. I think it would be awful. It would be absolutely awful to be a board member and have to make that kind of a decision. So thankfully, I haven't ever had to do it.
Yeah, and to the comment, there should definitely have been, I don't believe that there was a review process kind of for the board and the executive director to always be on the same page and collaborate. So that would definitely, you know, litigate that a lot, probably the tension or issues that they saw, but that was not the case. So I was just wondering from your perspective how that should have been handled.
Yeah, and you're welcome, Anna. And I think that's why it's so important to have regular meetings with the executive team and the executive director, because, you know, if you as an E-team starts to see problems, I mean, you can tell if there's a problem going on, right? That's a great opportunity for you to have kind of a quick conversation with the executive director, say, hey, let's talk about a few things we're experiencing and we're seeing before it gets to the point of no return. And maybe that's your opportunity to say, these are some things we're noticing, these are some things we're hearing. What can we do? What kind of things can we put in place to try to, you know, stop this freight train from going down the wrong direction? And that's why I think the relationship between the executive director and the E-team or the executive team is so incredibly important, is for that reason. The clear, open lines of honest lines of communication.
Right, true. From the beginning.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Krista, it looks like Margaret has a question.
Okay.
Hi, thanks. So I'm familiar just recently with a board that ousted an executive director, and I'm curious. Their process was really unfortunate, and so I think one of the things that, and I know this is something that some other folks really pay attention to, is that each board member on your board has sort of equal voting rights and equal access to education or to information. And so while the executive team may have sort of more, maybe more involvement or more communications or whatever with the executive director, those conversations really need to be communicated to the whole board, so that they're not kept in a vacuum. So in this particular case, some of the board members didn't even know that the executive had been ousted. And that should never happen, right? Like, and so I'm curious, Krista, if you have time, can you talk a little bit about the distinction between, say, the executive committee on the board and sort of the regular board members, and what those roles are, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that they have like increased decision making, because the decisions really are the right of the whole board.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet, Margaret. Thank you for the question. So obviously the executive committee would consist of the board chair, the vice chair, and the treasurer in most cases. Potentially you could have a past chair that would be part of that executive committee too. And the way I look at the executive committee is we have more meetings because we meet more with the executive director. And my view of the E-team and the executive director relationship is to kind of go through the noise. You know, what are the things that we need to talk about? What are the things that maybe need to be vetted that the whole board might not be interested in? Or, you know, what are some things we can bring to the board for decision making? But just kind of some of the day-to-day conversations, and maybe the executive director wants some advice on a particular topic, or you know, kind of wants to talk through a particular situation. The executive team is there to be that sounding board for the executive director as well. And so for me, that's kind of the role the executive team plays with the executive director. Kind of like I said, just to flush out some of the noise in the organization, and you know, talk about, you know, what do we want to talk about at the next board meeting? You know, there's this event that's coming our way, but I wanted to talk to you about it before we bring it to the whole board. Just an opportunity to kind of a sounding board, like I said. And then if there is a problem with the executive director, it is the responsibility of the executive team to take that to the board and say, we're hearing that there are some problems. We're hearing that there's, you know, some frustrations or some concerns or whatever that looks like. Give the board an opportunity to voice their opinions. If they want to do it in you know, in the group, great. If they want to do it with just an individual conversation, that's fine too. But the board needs to understand what steps the executive team are taking or will be taking in order to remedy or appease or fix, or whatever word you want to use, the concerns the executive director. The board should never not know. They should never not know. And you've got some board members who are like, I'm just happy to be here. I don't care. I don't have any problems. You guys are great. Everything is good. But living in with your head in the sand isn't always a good thing. And so I think it's important that even those board members who aren't vocal and who aren't voicing their concerns, that they do know that there might be some concerns because they might have some input or a different perspective. So That's really sad that the board members didn't even know that there was a problem. That should never happen. The board should all understand, everyone should be on the same page. And the executive team cannot make any decisions with moving forward on the releasing of an executive director unless the entire board is on board. Well, it doesn't have to be a unanimous vote, a majority vote in order to move forward. I don't know if that answered your question, Margaret.
It did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Anything else on this topic? Okay. All right. Turning over the reins. So the scariest thing for me as a board chair was not knowing who was going to take over when I was done. Because you always, for me, it was very important that I tried to lay the groundwork and get things running in a very good, efficient manner. The Goal Foundation always ran very well, always a well-oiled machine from a board perspective. I've been involved in 2 other boards, not so much. And when I got there, they didn't even know where their bylaws were. They hadn't looked at their bylaws in a very long time. Term limits, well, you know, maybe not. We'll if somebody wants to stay for 50 years, then that's totally fine. And for me, that didn't work. I wanted to make sure when I took over, when I was given the opportunity to be the board chair, that we had some procedures and we had things running the way they're supposed to run, and you know, just everything the way it's supposed to run to help the organization move forward with its desired objectives. And so for me, when I would look for board members, I would try to find people who could take that leadership role on and who would be willing maybe in the future to take that leadership role on. Not everybody wants to be a board chair. I understand that. But it's important that you, with your board, with your executive team, everyone is having conversations about what does the succession plan look like, because it's scary to get to the end of a term and not know who is going to take over for the treasurer or the vice chair or the chair. So I think having a very deliberate succession planning as part of your board is very important. And those are the obvious reasons that I've got up on the screen. Any comments around that? Okay, that's it. What questions, comments, anything I didn't cover, anything you want more information on?
I feel like this could probably be an all-day presentation because there's so many intricacies around boards, and each organization is different. So I think what you provided was great information. If anybody does have questions after the fact that you didn't want to bring up in person and that you would like Krista to address, I'm sure she'd be happy to do that. Also, if she's willing to share her slides, I'd be happy to share those out with you. I do have one quick question. When you were talking about the reviews, do you have any sort of resources for that on how committees can review themselves? And then maybe if you had an executive director review that people could access?
Yeah, I'll look in my archives for something. When I was the chair at Goal, we had a pretty good format we used. So I'll see if I can find that and I'll share it with you, Abby.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions before we give you 12 minutes back of your day?
I don't want to take time away from everybody's day, but I was just curious if anybody had ideas about the secretary role. And we've been talking a little bit about that at the YCC about, you know, the executive board member as the secretary, and it's just a lot of work. So I was just curious what other people do about that.
Oh, go ahead. Was somebody going to comment? So the boards I've been on, the only one had a secretary. And I don't know. I mean, I could go either way, because really the board I sat on where we had a secretary, they took the meeting minutes and they, you know, got everything out. They got the meeting minutes out ahead of time, and they were responsible for the agenda. So I think it really depends on your board, on what works for you and what doesn't. I've only, like I said, I've only had an experience one time with a secretary, and it was nice because it didn't fall on, well, it was the chair. It would have been the chair probably at the time to take that responsibility.
Other boards where staff members sometimes takes the notes, but obviously, you know, staff time is a resource that's really valuable. So I don't know if that's the best use of their time either. So we're talking about maybe like a transcription tool or something that could help, and then very techy, but you know, just something to help so that it's not such a burden on that one person.
You know what? You just reminded me. So when I was on the Weber Morgan Children's Justice Center board, they had a little recorder they used in order to take the meeting minutes, but somebody then had to transcribe it, you know, and that was, so I don't know. I don't know if that was, and it was a staff member that did that, now that I think about it. And I did not agree with that. Like, we're here to help. You guys have way too much to do, right? So yeah. Oh, it looks like Allie. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate it. I was just wondering if anybody had some unique way to solve that problem.
Yeah. Anything else?
Krista, could you talk a little bit about maybe work groups or committees that are sort of joint staff and board members?
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking in particular, you know, event committees I think are pretty easy because it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we're working on now is a development committee, and I have a development director, I have a development staff, and we want to have a development committee as part of the board also. How do those staff board member committees work well in your experience?
So I'm the board chair of the school my son goes to, St. Joseph Catholic High School, and well, elementary school and high school. And we have great committees. And one of the committees we have is an advancement committee. And we have the development director that's on that committee with us. And we have a couple of staff members on the committee, and then the rest of us are either board or non-board members. And I think it's working. I mean, I hope it's working great, because basically what happens is I reach out to the development director ahead of our advancement meeting and say, what do you want? What's coming up? Where do you need help? What do you want to put on the agenda so that we can make sure we're taking advantage of the people in the room and you know, giving you the support you need. And so that's what we do at St. Joe's. Is like I said, just reach out to her, and she kind of looks at the calendar and says, okay, we've got this and this event coming up, and this is what I need. And then that's what we talk about at the advancement meeting. And we divvy out tasks. Everybody is good about taking, you know, tasks for certain things. Like coming up, we have our big fundraiser in the spring that's called Spree. And that will be the #1 focus for the rest of the year until Spree happens in April, because that's our biggest fundraiser of the year. And so from your question is, how does it work? I think it depends on your committee, and I think it depends on if you have really clear objective or very clear goals and objectives laid out so that your committee knows exactly what they need to be working on. And that really comes from the development director, or it comes from the executive director, or, you know, you guys saying, this is where we need your help. Help me. Did that answer your question, Margaret? Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you everyone for the opportunity. I hope it wasn't really just a repeat of everything you already knew. But in my opinion, being on a board is an honor, and I take it very, very seriously. And I think the opportunity to serve on a nonprofit board is one that no one should take lightly. Everybody should take it seriously, because that's the role we play. We play the role to help your organizations grow. And I hope each of you have board members that support you in that way.
Thank you so much, Krista. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us, and I hope all of you have the rest of a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Krista.
Abby, thank you.
Bye, Susie.
You guys. Thank you.